If you think you're about to watch a simple entertainment video, you're mistaken. This is a short film that uses vivid, epic imagery to draw you into a deep historical journey with us. The Mongols, the nightmare of the 13th century world, swept into Vietnam after crushing the Southern Song. Here, battles of unprecedented scale erupted. Marked by the heroic sacrifices of warriors so young that some of their names would be remembered for eternity. From this clash between a giant and a nation, small in size but fierce in spirit, a military legend was born. This short film is the gateway to a long and extraordinary journey. Grab your popcorn, get comfortable, and join us for nearly 2 hours. A journey that will satisfy both your heart and your mind. The fortress of Xiangyang, last great shield of the Southern Song, fell after 6 long years of heroic resistance. With its collapse, the entire Song dynasty crumbled, and the UN Empire of the Mongols rose as the mightiest power on earth. To the Mongols, Dai Viet was more than a small neighbor. It was a thorn in their side, standing on a strategic crossroad. And it was also a matter of pride. For this was the land that had once defied them, the land that had scarred the myth of their invincibility. The 9th Prince of the Yuan Emperor led an army drawn from across Asia, the greatest host the world had ever seen. Mongol cavalry, Southern Song infantry, Dali warriors. At sea, the combined navies of the Mongols and the fallen Song, commanded by Omar, formed the strongest fleet of its age. It was a vast multi-ethnic force uniting the finest arms of Asia, led by generals who had already conquered the world. And now their gaze was fixed on Dai Viet. And so, the clash began between the world's strongest and a tiny kingdom. Dai Viet had no mighty fortresses to shield its borders, and that weakness showed in the lightning pace of the Gwen advance. One by one, the mountain passes and northern outposts fell. The opening of the war was no surprise. Once, the Mongols had ruled only the open battlefield, but years of sieges against the strongest citadels of the world had turned them into masters of assault. And yet the courage of Dai Viet was undeniable. In open combat, they fought the invaders to a standstill, trading blow for blow, sacrifice for sacrifice. But against an enemy superior in both numbers and strength, the choice was grimly clear: retreat or be surrounded and slaughtered to the last man.
A handful of fools thinking bare hands could tame the fury of a storm. I warned the court of the price of defeat. We must surrender as soon as possible. Have they listened? No. Against the Mongols, no army stands. Not even empires 10 times our strength survive their onslaught. If our nation of 3 million dares to fall, how many will remain alive? The men slain or chained as slaves. The women forced into the tents of the conquerors, turned into vessels for their bloodline. That is the fate awaiting us. And yet Tran Hung Dao calls me a coward, mocks me as if I were a timid woman. Tell me, can the lives of an entire people be risked on pride? But in the end, even my own kin, the 2 kings, my cousin and my nephew, chose the path of war. They already had their secret designs, and my warnings meant nothing. To weaken my voice, and those who, like me, urged surrender, they staged what they called the Dien Hong Assembly. They summoned the elder from every corner of the land, asking whether we should yield or fight. And with one roar, the answer shook the whole. Fight! They fed the people's pride, fanned the embers into a raging fire, and I knew then it was over. The king understood well the power of the crowd. Fight! 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 These fools would burn the kingdom, and their flames would consume me too. No, I must find a way to save myself before their madness drags me to ruin. I must contact the Mongol.
Prince Trần Ichtak's call for surrender was not entirely without reason. Across the world, many kingdoms had bent the knee to the Mongols and survived. Some even prospered under their protection. For Dai Viet, the choice between surrender and resistance was a 50-50 gamble. Fight and win, and you face the certainty of Mongol revenge in the future, with fewer advantages each time. Fight and lose, and you lost everything. From a purely pragmatic view, resistance carried high risk with limited reward. But what set the Trần dynasty apart was not cold calculation, it was spirit. The majority of the royal clan chose to stand and fight, believing freedom was worth any cost. And against all odds, they had both the will and the strength to make good on that choice. Looking back, we cannot help but admire them, not just as strategists or rulers, but as men and women who fought for the ideal of freedom itself.
The capital, once home to hundreds of thousands of bustling households, now lies silent. Millions of soldiers and civilians have already withdrawn to the south. Only 600 warriors remain, bound to a single grim purpose: to hold back the Mongol army for as long as humanly possible. They march straight into the jaws of death, commanded by Trần Binh Tron, a prince whose mother was the last queen of the former dynasty. It began a glorious 7 days of defiance. On the first day, they clashed with the vanguard. 1,000 Mongol scouts riding in hard and fast. The Thanh Duc elite guard was the most formidable force in all of Dai Viet, swiftly crushing the Mongols' first assault. The invaders had no choice but to withdraw. The Thanh Duc force was recruited in a most unusual way. Birth and rank meant nothing. Its ranks were filled with criminals, orphans, and the destitute with nowhere else to turn. They owed loyalty to no lord but the central court, and to the cause of the nation itself. Against an enemy that outnumbered them 1,000 to 1, there would be no return. The tide of foes seemed endless, each wave larger and fiercer than the last. The Mongols had brought the mightiest warriors of their empire. One by one, the soldiers of the Thanh Duc fell. With every life spent, the trade of man for man grew ever more costly and ever more hopeless. The army was far too small to stop an enemy so vast. Yet Tran Binh Trong turned to strategy, using every ounce of cunning to hold the invaders in check. The cost was horrific for both sides. The elite soldiers of the Tan Duc fell one after another, never to return, many still so young. Their dreams left forever unfinished. On the fourth day, they lost another 100 warriors. By the fifth, only a single squad remained. Togan himself took special notice of the extraordinarily valiant commander leading the enemy.
Good brother, I have waited for you a long time, and I respect heroes like you. To face many with so few, to hold out for so many days, to fight until the last man, you have served your homeland exceedingly well. A talent like yours should not be wasted in death. The UN Empire honors the brave and the skilled. We nurture such men. You and I could stand as brothers in arms, conquering great lands across the known world.
Ha 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 ha! I will never choose the easy path. I have long been ready to die.
Instead of dying here today, come with me, and together we will carve legendary victories that will echo through the ages.
Many have surely surrendered to you.
Many of my brothers in arms today were once like you, enemies who laid down their arms and joined the Empire.
I would rather be a ghost of the South than a king in the North.
Farewell.
The hero gave his life for his homeland. He fought with unmatched courage, surpassing all expectations, holding the enemy at bay for 7 full days. In those 7 days, the High Command withdrew and vanished without a trace. Now, the spirit of the entire Daivia people stands ready for the sacrifices yet to come. And Tran Binh Trong is the first to fall, the one who lit the great flame that will burn on.
Thanks to Tran Binh Trong holding the enemy for 7 days, we escaped. But after taking Thang Long, they have begun to read our path of retreat. I must buy more time, at least a few more days. Yet with Sugetu marching north, our space narrows with every step. Soon there will be no road left to run. This war is a race against time. Will I be captured first, or will the enemy's supplies run dry before then? Nantong suggested a marriage, a princess given to Togon, both to delay him and to place eyes and ears within his camp. I thought of one name, Princess Tien Tui. Beautiful, But her heart had once strayed to Tran Khandu, a reckless cousin of ours. Worse, she had already been promised to the son of Tran Hung Dao. The scandal forced me to banish Khandu, strip him of rank, cast him into common life. Only the Mongol threat brought him back to service. To send Thien Tui away would be to solve two problems at once, yet she refused with fury. She swore she would rather die than be wed into the house of our enemy. So then, another name, Princess Antu, graceful, virtuous, and loyal. When she heard the plan, her heart broke. That night, she wept in dreams, haunted by visions of a dark future. Alone, a woman among the Mongols. But courage and her love for our dynasty burned brighter than fear. She chose sacrifice. "I will be the eyes and ears of Dai Viet at Togun's side," she whispered. Her wedding to Togun bought us 3 precious days, 3 days to scatter our forces, to retreat once more. In those nights, Antu played her role well, a gentle wife, yet also the spy she had promised to be. The enemy are no fools, but tell me, when has a man ever resisted the snare of beauty? What set the Tran royal family apart from so many other dynasties around the world was their unity and their willingness to sacrifice. 2 figures stand out. Tran Bin Trong, for example, was no ordinary noble. His mother was Lai Chong, the last queen of the Li dynasty, and his father descended from the Li royal line. He carried the blood of 2 royal houses, exactly the kind of character you might expect in a novel to one day claim the throne. But in reality, he chose the path of sacrifice, dying in battle like countless others to defend his homeland. Another example was Princess Antu, remembered as one of the consorts of Prince Togon. She bore him 3 children, but Vietnamese history records her as one of the earliest examples of a female spy, giving her life in service to her country in a different way. And then there was Tran Hung Dao. His family had bitter rivalries with the branch of Tran Tan Tong. In fact, his own father had his wife taken by the king's father, and on his deathbed urged Tran Hung Dao to reclaim the throne by force. By all logic, Hung Dao should have been the least motivated to protect that royal line. Yet when the Mongols came, he became the strongest advocate for resistance, dedicating everything to defend the dynasty he might once have been expected to overthrow. This was the strength of the Tran family. Yes, they quarreled. Yes, rivalries ran deep. But unlike the bloody power struggles seen in many royal courts elsewhere, the Trans were more like a neighbor's family, arguing and resenting each other in peacetime. But when danger struck, closing ranks to defend one another with everything they had.
Core, the war between the Mongols and Dai Viet was a war of attrition. The Vietnamese used the scorched earth strategy, burning crops, emptying villages, denying the enemy every source of food. For an army as massive as the Mongols, this was deadly. The larger their numbers, the faster they consumed supplies, and no matter how well they guarded their supply lines, the Vietnamese were always there to harass and disrupt. The Mongols knew this, which is why their only hope was a lightning war. Find and crush the Tran royal army, or capture the two kings themselves before famine set in. The Tran rulers, on the other hand, avoided direct confrontation, deliberately stretching out the conflict. At times, the two kings even acted as bait, luring the Mongols deeper while buying time. There were no hidden tricks here. Each side knew the other's intent. The question was simple: who would achieve their goal first? It was a race against time, a deadly game of catch me if you can. The last stand of Tran Bin Trong and his 600 warriors has often been called the Asian version of the 300 Spartans. It was the same story. A small band of men facing an overwhelming horde, holding their ground at a choke point that neutralized the enemy's numbers. With a river on one side and a swamp on the other, Bin Trong forced the Mongols to attack only from the front. What made his Tanduk soldiers unique was their formation. Shield bearers in the first rank, long spears and halberds in the second, and archers protected in the third. Each of these compact units could operate on its own, resisting cavalry charges and enemy archers alike. For 7 days they held, their phalanx nearly impossible to break head-on. Most of their casualties came not from close combat, but from waves of Mongol arrows raining down. It was a slow bleed, and like the Roman legions trapped at Carrhae, they were cut down to the last man. Yet their sacrifice bought precious time, and etched their place among history's greatest last stands.
It's wartime and no one is safe. The Mongols struck at every village, seizing food for their march. Those who could not flee into the forests hid their stores, refusing to cooperate. And when pressed too hard, they chose death over surrender. Entire villages were wiped away, no soul left alive.
The headache returns again. Always the same dreams. Visions of past glory. Strange how those memories give me strength in the present. Why do I dwell on the past? Why does my head throb in the now? Perhaps I love battle, but I do not love slaughter. When a warrior falls by the hand of another in fair combat, that is the honor Tengri grants them. But as a general, I slaughter more than I truly fight. And now, the headache returns again. News from the front shatters his thoughts. Togong has ordered him north. The governor of Tangwa has surrendered, yet the other warriors fight on. They carve the words, "Sat that." Destroy the Mongols into their very flesh, a mark that they would rather die than bow. The headache returns again. On the streets of Dai Viet, the truth is clear. They have scorched the earth, denied us the glory of open battle. But it is more than that. If even the southern lines are burned, it means they foresaw our path. And if they foresaw our path, then traps surely await us in the north. From the first days of this campaign, Togon and I spoke endlessly of supply lines. We built every safeguard, made this lifeline untouchable, or so it seemed. And yet, this unease will not leave me. The headache returns again.
This was a deadly chase, a struggle of life and death that would decide the fate of a nation. Omar's relentless pursuit forced the two Tran kings to abandon their ships and flee by land. With intelligence fed by defected royals, Omar pressed on, hunting the kings without pause. But the royal guard, the Holy Wing, rose to their duty. Again and again they blocked the enemy, buying precious time. Ambushes flared across the land. Skirmishes broke out everywhere. The Mongols swore to capture the kings at any cost, yet somehow they always arrived a half step too late. At the coastal gate, Tran Khandu appeared, guiding the two kings to the sea. And there, like twin dragons, they returned to the eastern waves. The kings withdrew to Tanhua, where under their call, the armies of the realm gathered once more, ready for the counterstrike. The plan had worked to perfection. The great chase was the Mongols' final gamble, and now their hour of famine had come, while the spirit and will of Dai Viet blazed brighter than ever before.
I remember the day at Bintan. While the lords and generals held their council of war, I was left outside. The king, my cousin, handed me an orange to comfort me, as if I were but a restless youth. Perhaps he thought my fire was immaturity. No. What I carried was anger and fear for our nation. When the country faced peril, I poured my wealth into raising a band of warriors who shared my spirit. We stitched a banner that read, "Crush the enemy, repay the king." 1,000 men of my own, as many nobles had. I was then ordered to join my uncle, Tran Yat Duat, who led guerrilla raids across enemy-held lands. And it was my elder, Tran Hum Dao, who entrusted us with a bold design. Strike at the enemy's heart, through their mind. More than half of their ranks were not Mongols at all, but forced soldiers from fallen Song. And I knew their hearts, as did my brother, Jia Zong. Together, we sent a letter from a true prince of Song, urging them to lay down arms and abandon their Mongol masters. That letter spread like wildfire through the Song conscripts, and it shook the very army of Songa to its core. Among us stood exiles from Song. For them, it was a war of vengeance. When Sugatu's fleet drew near Hamtu Gate, we lay in wait with fire arrows. To the enemy, we were phantoms, rising from nothing, unleashing upon them a storm of flame. And then came the second shock, the sudden charge of Song warriors in our own ranks. To the conscripts forced into Mongol service, it was as if their brothers had returned from the grave. We spread rumors. Kublai was dead, the Song had risen again. Doubt and terror gnawed at their lives, especially the enslaved soldiers. Omar came rushing to reinforce Sugatu, but this too was part of our design. Against him, we sent General Wen Huai. 50,000 faced 50,000, but we had the will of the people, militias pouring endlessly into the fight. On the waters, the Viet-Song alliance stood unshaken. For the first time, we faced the invincible Mongol fleet in open battle, and we broke them. By the end, 30,000 of their men lay slain or captured. 200 warships fell into our hands. Sugatu and Omar escaped with their lives, but their legend of invincibility had been shattered. Seizing momentum, we struck again, this time at Takehead. And here, my uncle himself, Tran Hung Dao, took command. A general seasoned in both land and water. He had faced the Mongols nearly 30 years before. We placed our faith in him. And then, I saw him, the sworn enemy of our people, Suge-tu, the first warrior of the Mongols, whose bloody fame helped bring down the Song, whose hands were stained with the lives of those I loved, my wife's kin, my brothers-in-law, my people, all slaughtered by his campaigns. A blood debt I could not ignore. I swore to meet him in battle, with every breath and every ounce of my soul. If my death could secure the safety of Dai Viet, if it could avenge my fallen kin, then I would embrace it without fear. The greatest warrior of the Mongols. In the end, he is but a man, lost and broken on the battlefield of Dai Viet. Crush the enemy, repay the king.
Our scouts brought word, Togon's supplies are running dry. This is our moment. On the surface, they still look strong, but in truth, they are already preparing to retreat. And this time, we shall strike with the full force of Dai Viet. The entire army gathered as one to deliver the decisive blow. Cut their formations apart. Do not let them unite. Harass them without rest. Do not let them breathe. Strike at their lifelines. Do not let them feed. At Chongduong, we struck on land and water at once, hammering their fleets and their armies together. And at last Fanglong was freed, its gates thrown wide to welcome the return of our two kings. I'd planned this battle for months, a plan full of risk, yet built on reason, and with the chance to win. Everything began with the scorched earth strategy. The enemy knew we would burn the land, so they built a supply system tighter than iron, guarded and defended to keep us from raiding it. But their supply lines were like veins feeding a body. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers demanded endless convoys of grain and fodder each week. To protect this lifeline, they were forced to scatter their troops into countless camps. And that was the idea. Stretch their supply lines thin enough that each outpost would be weak enough for us to strike. With our knowledge of the land, we could appear suddenly, burn their stores, and vanish before they could react. But they can still reinforce these mobile garrisons, the king said. Then we must stretch them further, drive them from south to north, never letting them rest, never letting them store food. Let our retreats become bait. Let them exhaust themselves in the chase. For this to succeed, we would need three things: a master of guerrilla war, a commander quick to adapt, and warriors ready to die holding the enemy in place. The rest became history. A plan that seemed reckless, even desperate, proved victorious.
Tugon returned to Dadu inside a copper-clad tent, guarded on all sides. He was the 9th prince of the Mongol Empire. Such a man could not be allowed to die in some nameless forest. Yet that was exactly what the people of this land had tried to make real. Togun had faced not only the fury of local warriors, but the fury of his own father waiting in the capital. As for Omar, he was a proud commander of the Mongols, master of the strongest navy Asia had ever seen. But defeat had cut deep into his pride, wounding the very soul of a man once hailed as a legend. Sugaitu had perished while Omar lived. He felt no gratitude for his survival, only rage. He longed to return, to set foot once more on that cursed land. And when he did, the vengeance he carried would be merciless, multiplied 100-fold.
So why did the Mongols have to fight quick and win quick in Dai Viet? They knew Dai Viet would use the scorched earth strategy, and even if they stocked up supplies, the longer the war dragged on, the worse it would be for them. With a population of only 3 million and an iron will, Dai Viet left the Mongols with just two choices: to wipe out the whole Dai Viet population, or face resistance that wore them down day by day. The fastest way to end the war was to capture the king and destroy the main Tran army. To do that, they needed intelligence from inside Dai Viet and knowledge of the local terrain. And the surrender of some Tran nobles gave them confidence to chase the king directly.
So why were the Mongols invincible? Horse archers were the fighter jets of the 13th century. They came and went like ghosts. You could not chase them. What the Parthian cavalry did to the Romans at Karhay, the Mongol horse archers could do the same to Western knights more than 1,000 years later. Heavy cavalry were like giant motorbikes crashing straight into enemy lines. Imagine you are a foot soldier standing in front of thousands of these machines. Even if your spear brings down one, the momentum still crushes you and 5 men behind you. The mix of psychological fear and direct physical damage made heavy cavalry the kings of the battlefield before gunpowder arrived. Their strategy of lightning speed marches meant the enemy could not adapt or keep up. The Mongols chose the battlefield they could raid villages at will, while their enemies stood helpless. This is the most mobile army in the world. And finally, they built a mixed force. gathering the elite troops of every conquered nation, so they became strong in every type of warfare. If you think of it like a game, and the character named Mongol has the power to copy the full strength of any opponent he defeats.
So why did the Mongols have to be brutal? Their population was small, yet their ambition for dominance pushed them into wars with empires far stronger and larger. And unlike what many people think, the Mongols did not actually want endless wars. They wanted to avoid war at any cost. The best outcome for them was when the enemy surrendered without a fight. And to make that surrender happen, they needed shocking examples of what happened to those who resisted. Now you see the full picture.
So why did the Mongols bring such a huge army? We have to look at the bigger picture of history. These were the last days of Chabi in 1284, the empress, the woman Kubilai loved the most, and at the same time, he was under pressure to prove himself as the true heir of the Mongol legacy. Just like his ancestor Genghis Khan, the legacy of conquering the world. For Kubilai, Daiviet and Japan were thorns in his side. They damaged the image of the undefeated descendant of Genghis Khan. So this war in Daiviet had to be won, to raise the standing of two men. First, Togon, in the eyes of his father, and second, Kubilai, in the eyes of his fellow Mongol brothers.
So what were the rules of the game in this war? The context was clear. Daiviet was a small power in Southeast Asia, but still strong enough that the Mongols brought an enormous army to crush them quickly, because they knew a long drawn-out war would only hurt them. The odds of Mongol victory were almost 100% in the first days, but those odds dropped the longer the war went on. And both sides knew this very well, so Daiviet tried to buy time, while the Mongols had to capture the Tran kings at all costs. And the key to victory was information. Tran Hung Dao understood the Mongol movements clearly, and he could predict the exact moment when they would be at their weakest. But on the other side, the Mongols had very poor intelligence about Daiviet, and were often misled by the very king they were chasing.
So why did the further Daiviet retreated, the closer they were to victory? Because every time the Mongols chased them, the invaders grew more exhausted and lost more supplies compared to the local people. Think of the Mongol supply line like a rubber band. The further they marched, the more it stretched. And when it reached its limit, Daiviet used small scissors to cut it. Once the supply line was cut, the massive Mongol army turned into a giant burden. They had only two choices: retreat or starve. And Daiviet knew the perfect moment to strike. Their intelligence network was likely far stronger than the Mongols. When the Mongols chased the Daiviet, they always seemed to be just inches away from victory. Our best guess is that this was the result of clever baiting and counterintelligence from Daiviet. The Mongols were always fed just enough information to keep them hopeful, but never the critical piece they needed to truly finish the war. Why do the Vietnamese remember Tran Hung Dao as a saint of war from the 13th century until today? First, his victories were extraordinary. He never lost a single campaign. He took part in all three wars against the Mongols, two of them as the supreme commander, and led Vietnam to some of the most spectacular military triumphs ever seen on the global stage. What made him truly unique was his mastery of every form of warfare. He excelled on land and at sea, in pitched battles and in guerrilla raids, in conventional strategy and psychological warfare. He turned the Mongols' strength, their multi-ethnic army, into a weakness, using exiled Song princes to undermine their Chinese troops. He turned Vietnam's own weakness, the loss of territory, into an advantage, deliberately luring the enemy deeper where they could be cut off and destroyed. But beyond his victories, it was his spirit that made him immortal. He left behind strategy, writings, and stirring words that continue to inspire patriotism. And though his family line had old rivalries with the royal branch on the throne, he set aside vengeance and chose instead the harder path, putting the survival of the nation above his own bloodline. That is why, for centuries, Tran Hung Dao has stood not just as a general, but as Vietnam's eternal saint of war.
In 1287, just as Tran Hung Dao had foreseen, the Mongols prepared to strike Dai Viet once more. But this time, the Tran dynasty was ready. For 30 years, the nation had endured, rebuilt, and sharpened its warriors into living blades.
It has been a long time since we planted spies in the north. By now the seeds must have borne fruit. What news from the Yuan?
My lord, they prepare even more thoroughly than we expected.
This time, much of their host will be former Song soldiers. Endless ranks of infantry, trained from slaves. They are so numerous, yet disposable. We can also expect troops from Yunnan Dali.
That is only the beginning. Added to them are the elite Yurshan horsemen, a people whose cavalry skill rivals the Mongols themselves. And not only them, but Tangut riders as well.
Last time, we struggled bitterly against their Keshik cavalry, paired with heavy infantry in the open field. A devastating combination.
And now, their navy will bring Goryeo sailors into the fight. Horse archers, undefeated on any battlefield. I will keep our channels open with the spies in the north.
This time, they gather the finest warriors of Asia, so many types of soldiers, each with strengths and weaknesses we do not fully know, but it does not matter. For 30 years we have prepared for this very hour, training a generation of warriors. In Dai Viet, every man is both farmer and fighter, and the art of war is the most sacred skill. Our army values quality over numbers. Each soldier is a hero. In peace, they may quarrel and argue. In war, I know they will die to shield one another, to shield Dai Viet. That is our pride. 30 years have forged a generation of men who will fight to the death. Never surrender. And the longer they fight, the stronger they become.
This is our chance. Do you seek revenge?
Of course I do. The question is how to avoid the mistakes of last time.
Logistics? They will try everything to stretch and bleed our supply lines.
I know that well. That is why this time I have devised the perfect plan.
And what plan is that?
The power of the Navy. If we concentrate all supplies and move them by sea,
Then I can fully protect the convoys. They cannot defeat us in a direct confrontation on the water.
well said.
For this campaign, I have already
Now
built...
they shall be given to Dai Viet.
Now, I must reassure the Emperor.
This year, what do you think of the coming war?
This year, the war will be fought with ease.
Then let us spare the lives of our people as much as we can.
This time, bring plenty of physicians.
Tran Ichtak knows Dai Viet well.
He said, beware of Tran Hung Dao. He will surely build up the navy to counter you.
If that is all, I do not fear it. The navy of Dai Viet is decent, but nothing compared to ours.
But last time, we lost. They truly showed strength in open battle.
It does not matter. Our 700 new warships are unmatched, invincible in the world. Each one can crush the largest ships of the Southern Song with ease.
Such massive vessels. Will they still be agile?
For their size, they glide across the waters like storms.
storm of vengeance and sweep Dai Viet from the earth.
In the final months of 1287, Omar's fleet clashed with the forces of Tran Khan Du off the waters of Van Don, the first naval battle of this campaign. Omar's armada carried a critical mission to break open the sea route and escort the massive supply fleet of Zhang Wenyu.
Defeat was not an option. On the day I received my orders, Tran Hongdao himself reminded me of its weight. His command was clear.
Do not let Omar sail deeper into the waters of Dai Viet.
We struck first, launching a sudden assault, yet I could never have imagined the terrifying power that awaited us. Their warships were vast and mighty, like dragons torn from legend. We were stunned by their sheer force. Each charge of theirs split our vessels in two. We had one of the strongest navies in the region, but they were stronger still. And in that instant between life and death, I saw it. Their massive ships moved with unnatural speed, too fast to be burdened with supplies. That meant the real grain fleet must be trailing behind. So I feigned retreat, vanishing among the islands, lying in wait for the slow, heavy supply ships. Omar raged, chasing the ghost of my fleet, never once suspecting I had never left at all. I could not throw away lives recklessly. The true hero is not the one who dies gloriously in the wrong moment, but the one who endures for the greater cause. A skilled fighter does not lose. A wise fighter survives even in defeat. The moment of my humiliation, of apparent failure, was the moment the enemy felt most secure. Their satisfaction, their arrogance, would become the weight that dragged them to the grave.
When news came that Tran Khan Du had failed to halt Omar, the first phase of Tran Hongdao plan collapsed. Summoned back at once to face punishment for his failure, yet Khan Du begged for time, a few weeks only, so that he might redeem himself. It was a bold request, and one that carried the weight of death should he falter again. But fate often favors those who seize it. If Tran Khan Du faltered on the seas against Omar, then on land in the northwest, Tran Nhat Duat faced the army of Arug marching down from Yunnan. This force was chosen with care, for the Yuan believed Yunnan troops would counter the mountains and climate of Dai Viet, since their homeland shared the same harsh terrain. They wore armor of woven rattan, cheap, durable, and light, giving them speed in the jungles. But from the borderlands, the mountain tribes had been persuaded by Tran Nhat Duat to stand with Dai Viet. They ambushed, harassed, and slowed the invaders at every step. Legend spoke of warriors carrying mountains on their shoulders. Perhaps only a metaphor, but one that reflected the crushing ambushes they unleashed. At Tuyen Quang, countless skirmishes erupted, each designed to wear down Arug's advance. Though these tribes had once fought against the Tran, now they became allies, striking together in defense of the realm. Tran Nhat Duat knew his task: delay the enemy at all costs and prevent the three Mongol armies from joining into one. Arug bore the weight of expectation, determined to secure victory with his Yunnan troops. You have archers? So do we. You strike from the trees? We strike back the same in these mountains where Mongol cavalry held no power. It was infantry against infantry, Dali's soldiers against the smaller, leaner forces of Dai Viet. The struggle became a brutal give and take, an endless chain of ambushes and lightning raids in the forest. Generals Lasash and Ha-Han fought for the last man, and like Kran Bin Trong before them, they chose death over surrender. For 3 long months, 18 battles, each one a saga in itself, Tran Nhat Duat held Arug at bay. At last, though, Arug broke through, forcing his way past the defenses toward Thang Long.
Who would have thought that fire and steel would once again descend upon Thang Long for the 3rd time? The fall of Van Don had shattered our plan A. And with Omar's mighty fleet now pressing us, we found ourselves encircled on all sides, like fish trapped in a net. We could not afford to lose the initiative. The rules of the game had changed, and we would need short blades to strike against long ones. Our next move would be played at Thang Long itself. The capital, freshly rebuilt over 3 years, was to become a battlefield once more. We sent a fleet to block the enemy's advance toward the city. The goal was not victory, but time. Time to evacuate our court and our people. Though our fleet took heavy losses and was forced to withdraw, the delay was enough. We prepared Thang Long for defence and kept the flames of resolve burning in the hearts of our soldiers. The enemy struck the city with fury, as we expected. And as planned, we fell back to the south, leaving ambushes behind on the roads of pursuit. Each step the Mongols took led them further, their ranks thinned by relentless harassment. In the end, we reached Thien Truong in safety, the homeland of our dynasty. From here, together with the 2 emperors, I turned to Plan B. The war shifted, the board changed. Variables rose, one after another, but the spirit of Dai Viet endured, and with it, victory would still be ours.
At this moment in Van Don, Tran Khanh Du was ready to redeem his name. He hid his fleet behind the islands, waiting for the heavy supply ships of Zhang Wenhu to pass, and prepared the ambush.
A true strategist wins without fighting. Loose the fire arrows. Turn the sky into a storm of flame. I have waited for this moment, for the fleet to sail into this narrow sea, treacherous with reefs, where the tides rise and fall like traps of heaven. Surround them on all sides. Let there be no escape. Today, they will sink to the bottom of Van Don. From every direction, the fleet I raised with my own hands surges forth, casting the great net upon this shoal of prey. The Sea of Quang Ninh lies in the palm of my hand. Zhang Wenhu flees, bitter with rage. Let him go. He is but a small fish. Why does a true strategist win without fighting? Because one timely victory can change the fate of an entire nation.
Omar, failing once again to capture the 2 kings, repeating the humiliation of 3 years before, burned with fury. As he marched past the ancestral tombs of the Tran dynasty, a dark thought ignited in his mind.
In this campaign, I believe the Mongols prepared a nearly flawless plan. They advanced in winter with 3 separate armies. The Yunnan force was tailored for Dai Viet's harsh mountain terrain, expected to break through the northwest. Learning from past failures in supply, this time they used Dai Viet's river network for logistics. This was a 2-in-1 strategy. First, concentrating supplies into one route made protection easier. They reshaped the rules of the game, neutralizing Dai Viet's scorched earth tactic from the earlier wars. Run and harass all you want, we can still sit firm, they must have thought. In reality, water transport is always faster, more stable and safer than land. Second, they turned Dai Viet's naval strength into a weakness. The famous Mongol warboats of Dai Viet, so mobile in other wars, now faced the sheer might of a rebuilt Mongol fleet. Remember, after 2 crushing defeats by Japan's Divine Wind, the Yuan Navy was rebuilt. With expertise from Goryeo and the Southern Song, 2 of the best naval powers of the age. The Mongol fleet of this era was Asia's strongest. This was a tight and almost perfect plan, forcing Dai Viet to face them head-on. As long as river supply lines held, the Mongols could stand firm inside Dai Viet territory. Now let's turn to Dai Viet. At this time, their power was nowhere near the Mongols. Compared to Champa or other Southeast Asian kingdoms, they were strong. But against the Mongols, even all of Southeast Asia united might not be enough. From the first 2 invasions, Tran Hung Dao learned an important lesson. Drafting masses of peasants created too many risks and drained future labor. In the Third War, he chose to use only elite troops with limited numbers. There are 2 advantages to this. The first is mobility. He can quickly deploy troops to attack or withdraw without having to wait for troops to gather and without fear of being caught by the enemy. The second is that the implementation of his strategy became more coherent and less variable. After the invasion of 1258, the Tran kings saw clearly that more wars with the Mongols were inevitable. They accepted nominal surrender, but never foreign domination. Since war was unavoidable, they built a golden generation of warriors trained from childhood. If Tranich Tak built a political and cultural education system, then Tran Hung Dao devoted his heart to the military academy named Jiang Vo, creating a generation of young generals who were educated in the world's military elite combined with the context of Vietnam. By this era, Dai Viet had a generation of warriors trained from boyhood with professionalism comparable to the Spartan agoge more than 1,000 years earlier. Every soldier carried discipline and combat skills above the regional average. This strength did not come from chance or sudden patriotism, but from foresight from decades ago. It could be said that they were ready to fight the giant from the north. Tran Khandu is a very, very fascinating figure. You know, the Asians have the concept of yin and yang. In yang, there is yin, and in yin, there is yang. Well, Tran Khandu himself carried that mix of good and evil. Some sources say he used his power to enrich himself, running shady business from the non la, a symbol of Vietnamese culture, and collecting money from the poor. His crimes, big and small, are many, from a love affair with another person's fiancée to treating people as objects of exploitation. He works well with a person but not necessarily with another, although in the overall picture, he is a chivalrous general ready to sacrifice himself for the nation. He possesses a natural talent in literature and the military. In literature, he was the hand that helped Tran Hung Dao put together the masterpiece of military writings. In the art of war, he could win battles with fewer men, turn peasants into soldiers to achieve unexpected victory, and most impressively, in the darkest moments of near defeat, he could spot the golden chance for victory. That kind of flexible brilliance puts him in the same league as Alexander the Great at Gaugamela. Tran Khandu is a hero who feels very real, not just a one-dimensional icon painted by propaganda. If we compare him with figures in American pop culture, he has a bit of Loki in him, the adopted son with a mischievous edge, and a bit of Tony Stark with his arrogance and genius. But whether it's Tran Khandu, Loki, or Tony Stark, all of them share a loyalty to their family and a drive to secure the greater good. Tran Hung Dao did not only appear as a commander, he was the very spirit of the whole war. His image is tied to the great unity of the nation, when he was willing to put aside personal gain for the greater cause. The line "the king and his officials in one mind, brothers in harmony, and the whole country contributes its efforts" was the key to defeating the Mongol horsemen. He was a military genius with bold strategies. The scorched earth strategy, exchanging the entire capital to trap the enemy, was the obvious proof of his intelligent risk-taking. Behind the saintly general was also a very human heart. During 8 years in the Forbidden Palace, he and Princess Tianthan grew close. When she was arranged to marry another, Trang Quoc Tuan made a fearless choice. He abducted her on the very night of the wedding ceremony. It was reckless, yet it showed his courage and resolve. What is remarkable is that even the Mongols called Tran Hung Dao a divine general. His strategy at the Bach Dang River became a model case study in how the weak can overcome the strong, how stillness can defeat chaos. His enemies honored him not by words, but by quietly turning his victories into lessons for their own generals for generations after. For the Vietnamese, he is worshipped as a saint, not just for his brilliance in war, but for his virtue, always placing the nation above self-interest. In Western culture, you could call him the Hannibal of the East, a military genius who knew how to make the strongest empire of his time tremble, by wearing them down and then striking the decisive blow. One thing many people mistakenly think about the Mongols is that they are brutal and simple-minded, using pure force to sweep away their opponents. On the contrary, the Mongol Empire was built on pragmatism, sophistication in management, as well as top-notch military strategic thinking. They often won with a much smaller army than their opponents. If we think of an empire as a startup, then when the Mongol startup began, they had almost nothing, less capital, and only 1/10 the manpower of their rivals. Yet they won by investing in the right places and being extremely creative. As nomads, the Mongols had an open mind, free from rigid patterns of settled farming societies in the south. They were ready to break old rules and win with new ideas. They smashed Xiangyang's walls with Huihui trebuchets from the Islamic world. They blinded the Japanese samurai with Tetsuho bombs learned from the Southern Song. They crushed the princes of Rus and Kiev through psychological warfare. They terrified Europe by combining different types of troops into one unified force, much like Hannibal Barca did at Cannae. They expanded their empire by building a cutting-edge logistics and postal system known as the Yam, and they held stability at home by encouraging equality across ethnicity, religion, and background, while promoting meritocracy. That is why many top Mongol generals were actually from other nations, yet they were respected and empowered. The Mongols were not ignorant savages. They were a product of advanced intelligence. That's why they ruled the world for 162 years.
In 1288, 60,000 Mongols burned on the Bach Dang River. This was the Red Cliff of Southeast Asia, the epic finale of 30 years of war between Dai Viet and the Mongol Empire, Vietnam's greatest military victory, and one of the most misunderstood in history. Stay to the end and discover how this impossible triumph was won. After months of stalemate and hunger, Togun believed he was about to receive an unexpected gift.
Why are you surrendering only now? Dai Viet's surrender at this moment means nothing, and it's hardly believable.
Actually, it's simple. We waited for this moment so we would have the greatest leverage when negotiating with you.
You have no leverage. We have continuously pushed back your armies, killed your great generals, and taken many of your fortresses.
You are out of supplies. We know your plan this time was a war of attrition. Your massive fleet of supply ships proved that. Those stores would have fed you for 6 months, but once they are gone, your strategy collapses. Now you are counting down the days until starvation. I have seen the rations in your camps. We are a small state that in any case prefers peace with a great power like the UN. This is the best deal you will get, and we can discuss the terms.
Very well. Let us hear the conditions of your capitulation.
But what seemed like a gift soon revealed itself as tragedy. Togun had been deceived by Dai Viet. While he grew complacent, imagining that peace terms were within reach, the suicide squads of Dai Viet infiltrated the Yuan camp night after night, striking at the heart of his lifeline, their last remaining granaries. For an army already crippled by famine, these supplies were their only chance of survival. And now the flames consumed them. Driven to madness, Togun raged as his soldiers starved. Worse still, the raids did not stop. They came again and again, denying the Mongols any chance to rest. At last, the empire that had crushed half the world found itself with no choice but to retreat. But are you curious? How did Dai Viet drive the Mongols into such a desperate corner? Let us go back to the weeks before and uncover the plan that set the stage for this moment.
Why are you so certain they will believe our false surrender? Because they have no choice. They are forced into a position where they must accept it. But have you thought, what happens when they return?
That is the true danger. If they march home safely, they will come back stronger than before.
Then we shall have no peace until their army is crushed. Only after we destroy them completely will negotiations have meaning.
A part of this is their vengeance, as the Mongol has desecrated the tombs of Tran ancestors.
We will not negotiate until their army lies in ruin.
2 months earlier, after the victory at Van Don,
The triumph at Van Don fit perfectly into our design.
The war returns to a battle of attrition.
The enemy still does not know of Zhang Wenhu's defeat. That is our advantage. Within 1 month, I will corner every piece on their board.
near Thap's Son, a seemingly small skirmish erupted, yet its consequences would ripple across the entire campaign, shaping the fate of the war itself.
Strike enough, then pull back.
The clash with Tran Hung Dao left Omar uneasy. He feared the grain fleet had been ambushed, and so he lingered, waiting, guarding Jiang Wenhu's supplies at Tapsun. A month slipped away in anxious watchfulness for a convoy that no longer existed. Meanwhile, Tran Hung Dao's stand at Tapsun did more than hold the line. It expanded Dai Viet's reach, pressing directly against Togon in Thang-Long. Fearful of encirclement and the loss of his supply route, Togon withdrew in haste to Ban Keep. Not long after, Omar too fell back to Ban Keep to rejoin him. Thus more than a month was wasted for the Mongols, drained of strength, drained of resources, while Tran Hung Dao grew stronger than ever. His next move was bold, seizing Chukdong. Together with Thapsun, it formed two blades at the Mongols' throat, threatening to sever their only escape by sea. In this grand game of encirclement, Tran Hung Dao had triumphed. Every path for the enemy was sealed. Unless the Mongols dared a reckless assault, their fate was already written: starvation or retreat.
Now we must split into two routes to withdraw from Dai Viet. And surely they will ambush us.
Problem is, we do not know how many men they have, nor where those ambushes lie.
I believe that even if they muster all their forces, they can only strike at one of us at a time. They will concentrate their forces to destroy one of us in order to gain leverage in negotiations.
Your wing will face far greater risk than mine.
That is exactly what they want us to think. Perhaps they will strike against you.
Send a cavalry detachment to ride with me.
Very well, the fighting will take place at a narrow stretch of river. It will be most unfavorable for you.
My first priority is to reach open water. Once I make East Sea, I will meet you in Dadu.
Good luck, brother-in-arms.
And then, Togon and Omar split their forces to retreat toward Yuan, Omar taking the waterways toward Bach Dang, while Togon marched north by land. But in Dai Viet, a counter-plan was being carefully calculated.
Their route is fairly predictable, which makes our work easier to plan. Yet because it is predictable, they will be far more cautious. They will surely send scouts ahead to locate our stake fields and ambush points before committing their columns. We must force a cautious enemy into a trap, make them overthink their safety until they walk right into our snare.
Bach Dang is a stretch of river. If I were them, I would plant stakes in the most treacherous bend of the river, where stakes were driven long ago, a place that has shredded armies that tried to pass before. Do not assume large ships make you safe.
I have several hypotheses about where they might have set their stake fields. We will always send scouts ahead to probe the channel and keep cavalry ready to strike any ambushers that appear.
We will combine fire tactics with the stake field. The stakes are meant to fix them in place, to hold their fleet fast where we can strike. When the tide falls and the water drops, those stakes will rise like a great thorned barrier. The field is prepared, yet the difficulty lies in timing the ebb of the tide. If the enemy passes at the wrong hour, the stakes will be useless, and our ambush will fail. With the guidance of local people who know the tides, we have pinpointed the exact hour to lie in wait. The stake field is set at the choke, where they are forced to sail. There is no alternate route for them to avoid it. When their ships struck the stakes, their first reflex was to flee ashore. What awaited them on the banks was no mercy, but our infantry lying silent in ambush. The very troops forged by 30 years of patient preparation and hunger for this hour. Tens of thousands moved as one thought, ready to die for Dai Viet. As for the cavalry escorting the convoy, their route is simple and forced. Every road they must take crosses the bridges we can break. What we can build, we can destroy. Togon may still have an army too large to ring completely with our forces. Now the aim is unforgiving and absolute to annihilate the entire enemy host here.
So my fight to survive begins in earnest. 31 miles from the Lukdao River to the East Sea, so short on a map. Yet every mile feels endless with danger pressing close. If I make it back to Dadu alive, I will return 100-fold with vengeance for what was taken. That promise steals me now. These narrow tributaries bite like hidden mouths. Ambushes wait in those side channels exactly where our enemies would want us to pass. They know our route. They have set traps along the way, and they have blocked the other branches of the river. We could force our way through, but I fear the cost would be even greater. More ambushes waiting ahead. Of course, they funnel us where they choose. Why else would cavalry scouts be nowhere to be seen? Silence there smells of disaster. I am walking into a trap, and I walk alone. The worst thing for a navy moving by night is the rain of fire from both banks. A tactic meant to turn dark water into a furnace. It is even more deadly in these tight, twisting passes. We must not rush. Haste will scatter men and doom the convoy, so we will move slow, measured, and watch every shadow. Survive this night, and the tale of their arrogance will be written in ash and broken masts.
April 9th, 1288. After weeks of weary marching and rowing, Omar finally reached the stretch of the Bach Dang River where the ambush lay in wait. Exactly as planned, the Mongol fleet found no other path to take. At that moment, Trần Hưng Dao's masterpiece began to unfold. The legendary naval battle was about to begin, a clash destined to be remembered for 1,000 years. The navy of Dai Viet lay hidden in every branch of the river, waiting for Omar's armada to pass. Then the warships of Mongdong emerged in defiance, as if to send one final message: the last battle is here. General Nguyen Quai's squadron sailed out to challenge, clashing briefly with the Mongols. Then, as so many times before, the Dai Viet ships broke away, retreating downriver as if in fear. The vast Mongol fleet pressed forward into the broad waters, a channel wide and open, seemingly perfect for their massive ships to surge and crush all resistance. Just a little further, and they would reach the sea, freedom, and survival. It was then, at that fateful hour, that Omar gave the order to surge ahead. At that very moment, the hidden navy of Dai Viet burst from the side channels, flanking the Mongol fleet. For the first time, the full strength of Dai Viet's river forces struck all at once, and the invaders reeled in shock. Had three choices of retreat, but one was already sealed by great Tran warships, lashed together across the river like an iron wall. Forced to take the broader channel, they sailed straight into their doom. As the tide receded, the first ships crashed upon the stake field, impaled and trapped. The vessels behind slammed into them, piling chaos upon chaos, until the river became a tangle of shattered hulls. Elite commandos of Dai Viet dove beneath the waves. Boring holes into the enemy hulls. while archers rained fire arrows onto the decks. Yet the deadliest blows came from the great engines on both banks, massive fire projectiles that turned the waterway into a furnace. In desperation, Mongol troops tried to leap ashore from the few ships still free. But every landing was met with ambush and driven back in blood. The Bach Dang River had become a river of fire, and still it was not enough. The Tran Navy unleashed fire rafts packed with straw and oil, pushing them into the jammed fleet. The river burned red, a living hell from which no escape remained. By dawn, the victory of Dai Viet was complete. Survivors were hunted down along the banks, the rout lasting into the next day. And in the north, as Togon led his army through the Noibang Pass, he too bled. Misled by false intelligence, he sought to avoid an ambush by taking the narrow road, only to march straight into the trap set by Tran Hung Dao. Though the defenders were few, they wielded the mountains themselves as weapons, cutting down far greater numbers of Mongols. The jaws of the trap had closed, both by land and by river. The mightiest empire of the world had been broken.
Looking at the overall strategy after the victory at Van Don, we believe Tran Hung Dao played the war like a game of chess, using stillness to control movement with no wasted moves. He didn't make many moves, but every time he deployed his forces, the enemy was pushed deeper into a deadlock. When he marched to Thapsan, he threatened 2 key river branches flowing to the sea, forcing the enemy to stay stuck in defense. Too cramped to counterattack, yet too scared of falling into his trap. When he guarded the sea gate, he forced Togon to abandon Thang Long and retreat into Van Keep. The attack on Omar was a form of intimidation that forced Omar to waste a whole month waiting for Zhang Wenhu, while Togon had to stay locked down at Van Keep. It was a small move, but it stopped them from expanding their foothold while their food supplies kept draining away. When he moved his troops from Tan Hoa to Chukdong, he drove another nail in their coffin, cutting off the escape route and expansion route of the Mongol navy. When he pretended to surrender and ambush the Mongol supply depot, that was the final nail in the coffin, destroying their last lifeline. That was checkmate. The famous Bach Dang battle followed, but it was only possible because of the brilliant strategy beforehand that created the chance for such a spectacular tactical victory. If we compare it to chess, the Mongols were smart, seasoned like grandmasters, but Tran Hung Dao slowly cornered them until they were checkmated, helpless to move. Let's talk about the tactics at the Bach Dang battle and the erroneous simplification. There are many misunderstandings about the main cause of casualties in the Bach Dang victory. The Mongol army did not suffer major casualties from crashing into stakes. In fact, the number of ships damaged by stakes was only a few leading ships. So what role did the stakes really play? Before answering that, we need to look at the 2 key factors of the victory at Bach Dang: incendiary attacks and mastery of the terrain. Incendiary attacks from flaming arrows, firebolts and firestones were launched from both riverbanks. Imagine huge wooden ships packed tightly together, like setting an entire neighborhood of wooden houses on fire. The use of terrain was about mastering the riverbanks, side channels, current flows, and especially the timing of the tides, turning the whole area into a perfect trap. The stake field was part of this terrain-based tactics. The stakes weren't meant to sink ships by piercing them. They formed a natural death trap, a barrier that locked the Mongol fleet in place. This blockade was absolutely crucial. Without it, the whole plan would have collapsed, because there'd be no way to keep the Mongols from escaping the incendiary attacks. Why were the Mongols so confident? Because their massive warships could easily overpower the smaller Dai Viet boats in open water. They could ride their weight and the tides to break through and pull back, something the lighter ships had no way to stop. Imagine hundreds of container ships charging straight at you. You might set a few on fire, but most would plow right through. The stakes changed that. Thousands of giant underwater spears that stopped the fleet in its tracks. Even the strongest ship that slipped past one row would get caught on the next, and once stuck, it would be ripped apart by dozens of allied boats swarming around it. So the Mongol ships were jammed together, completely stuck. They couldn't even move, let alone turn around. In modern terms, this was a traffic jam on the river. And when you have hundreds of ships trapped in one spot, what did Dai Viet do? They rained fire from above and from both riverbanks. The flames spread quickly. Even if the Mongols tried to resist, they were already in a hopelessly vulnerable position, like standing in an open field in modern warfare while your enemy is firing from cover. The most logical move for the Mongols would have been to pull the ships that weren't yet stuck to the shore and launch a landing attack. But of course, Dai Viet had anticipated that and ambushed those marines too. The Mongols were now trapped in a situation where they couldn't advance, couldn't strike back, and the more they struggled, the worse it got. Every moment that passed meant another part of the fleet was going up in flames. This was checkmate, no escape, just a river of fire. Even if Scipio Africanus himself came back to life, he might have had no way out. At this point, it was certain death. If time could rewind, maybe Omar could have changed the outcome with a different decision earlier on. What do you think? If you were Omar, what would you have done? Leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Now let's talk about the variables in this strategy. The success of the Bach Dang plan was actually quite risky because it depended on so many things lining up perfectly. What if Omar had passed through that stretch of river earlier or later, missing the exact timing of the tide? What if he had chosen a different river branch, then avoid the stakes trap field? And there were dozens more of these what-if questions. The most critical factor was this: timing the ambush perfectly with the tide. We believe Dai Viet used a push-and-pull method. If the enemy was moving too slowly, they hit from behind, forcing the ships ahead to surge forward. If the enemy moved too quickly, they would block and fall back gradually to slow them down. By doing this, they could control the enemy's pace, making sure they arrived at the battlefield exactly when the tide turned. There were two critical moments they had to control: the moment the enemy entered the ambush zone, and the moment they sailed into the underwater stake field. Both had to be timed with absolute precision. The second key factor was psychological warfare. The Mongols knew there might be an ambush, and Dai Viet knew the Mongols knew. So they planted multiple fake traps and decoy stake fields, creating noise, and forcing the Mongols to keep guessing where the real danger was. And that's why, when the real trap finally struck, it hit at the exact moment when the enemy felt most confident and full of hope. There is an important question. Why did the Mongol general fall into the trap? What was going through his mind? Ambushes in history are often misunderstood. They can make the losing side seem foolish. But honestly, no general is naive or blindly overconfident. Even today, someone managing just 5 people has to think carefully. A man commanding tens of thousands in the ancient world would have thought 10 times harder. So why did they still get caught? Why did the Mongols fall for the one at Bach Dang? When Omar was trapped, it came after a month of constant tension. Moving carefully, bracing for ambushes, reacting to false alarms, trying to defend his fleet inside narrow river branches at night and at terrain that clearly worked against him. When he finally broke through to a wider open branch near the sea, almost at safety, it felt like the final step after 1,000 grueling steps. This last step looked easier than everything before. The wide river seemed like an advantage. The rising tide seemed like an advantage. Even if he suspected a trap, he probably thought, the only way out is to smash through it. And the truth is, his fleet was strong enough to do that. He even sent scouts to check the river's width and saw no sign of stakes. He did everything a capable commander could have done. So saying he lost because he was arrogant isn't fair. He lost because his enemy pushed him into a situation where he had no choice but to fall.
Let's summarize Dai Viet's 3 wars against the Mongols. We see the 3 wars between Dai Viet and the Mongol Empire as a story of military growth for both sides. Let's break it down by stages. Stage 1 is the year 1258. At the Battle of Bin Le Nguyen, Dai Viet appeared overconfident. They dared to face the Mongols head-on open ground, likely because they had a much larger army and even war elephants. Dai Viet learned they could not fight the Mongols with conventional tactics. The Mongols learned how difficult Southeast Asia's terrain and logistics would be. Stage 2 is the year 1285. By this stage, Dai Viet had mastered guerrilla warfare. The Mongols came to realize that quick blitz-style campaigns would not be enough. Stage 3 is the year 1288. This was the peak of both sides' evolution. Dai Viet now launched fully integrated campaigns, combining psychological warfare, terrain mastery, and riverine combat. The Mongols countered with a much simpler but highly effective approach. A near-perfect logistics system prepared for a long war. But Dai Viet still won, because they adapted faster. The Dai Viet versus Mongol wars were not only life or death struggles, but also a sort of brutal martial arts exchange. After each clash, both sides went home, refined their strategies, and returned stronger. In an age where failing to adapt meant destruction, the Mongols were the fastest learning army in the world. But ironically, Dai Viet, in that moment of history, learned even faster. And they dealt a blow that would haunt the Mongol Empire for decades to come.
How common was the scorched earth strategy that Dai Viet used? Actually, it was very common. The core logic of scorched earth is simple: deny the enemy access to resources. In many cases, it was a standard step in warfare. There are some classic examples. The Scythians against the Persians, the Assyrians against the Neo-Assyrians, Fabius Maximus against Hannibal Barca, the Byzantines against the Arab world, William the Conqueror against the Anglo-Saxons, and even the Mongols themselves suffered from scorched earth tactics during their campaign against Hungary, 1241 to 1242. They knew very well how this strategy worked. So, saying Dai Viet won purely because of scorched earth would be inaccurate. It was a common and familiar tactic to any experienced commander. What made Dai Viet stand out was how they spiced it up. They didn't just use it as a standalone move, but built it into a chain of interlocking strategies, turning it into a devastating combo. It was this integration, not just the tactic itself, that made it so unexpectedly effective and caught the Mongols off guard. To dive deeper into this topic, we'd need to break it down with multiple case studies, which we can explore in future videos.
Let's talk about the tragedy of Togon and Omar. Let's talk about Togon first. We couldn't find much about him, only scattered notes that he was the 9th prince, son of Bayujin of the 4th Ordo, who held his own authority in Dali and was entrusted with leading 2 invasions of Dai Viet. From these fragments, we can guess that Kublai Khan placed high expectations on him, not as an heir, of course. The designated successor was Zhenjin, and even after Zhenjin's death, the throne went to Zhenjin's son, Temur. But still, commanding nearly 1 million mixed troops across 2 invasions shows that Togon was given a rare chance to prove himself. And despite his crushing failure in 1285, Kublai trusted him enough to give him another shot. That alone is remarkable. Considering Marco Polo noted Kublai had at least 47 sons, the fact that Togon kept getting opportunities suggests he was treated with far more favor than most of his brothers. It also partly explains why there's so little record of him in official history. With such great expectations, Togon's defeat would have deeply wounded Kublai, so much that he disowned his own son afterward, and traces of Togon may have been deliberately erased from the records. Togon passed away 13 years after the Dai Viet campaign. That battlefield became the grave of his career, the end of a golden future for one of Kublai's favored sons. Now, about Omar. There are 2 accounts of his background. One claims he was Tangut, another says he was Khwarezmian. Even the 29th generation descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, whichever version you believe, 2 things are clear: he was noble and he was from the Middle East, not Mongol. To us, that partly explains his arrogance and brutality during the war with Dai Viet. As we mentioned in an earlier video, the Mongol Empire was built on meritocracy. For a noble to repeatedly fail was already a serious mark against their worth, and this was especially critical for a commander who wasn't ethnically Mongol like Omar. Perhaps in Omar's mind, the war against Dai Viet was a fight for his very survival. Those defeats were humiliations so deep that they turned into hatred that sank into his bones. And history shows hatred like that always calls forth the same in return.
An interesting topic I would like to talk about is the unique emperor internship system in history. The Tran dynasty of Dai Viet had a fascinating system for training the future emperors. They allowed 2 emperors in charge at the same time. One called the Supreme Emperor, and the other the Reigning Emperor. You can think of it like this. The Supreme Emperor was the chairman of the board, while the current emperor was the CEO. When the new emperor first took the throne, the chairman would personally train him on real governance. And if the CEO turned out to be ineffective after some time, the chairman could remove him and appoint a new one. In reality, the Supreme Emperor held the real power, but the plan was always to transfer authority once the new emperor became experienced enough, gradually. When the Supreme Emperor finally felt confident that the new emperor was fully trained and ready, the transition had gone smoothly. He would leave politics entirely and become a monk. This system hit at least 4 birds with one stone. It ensured that the new emperor wouldn't make reckless decisions. And even if he did, the Supreme Emperor acted as a safety net to ensure the country's proper functioning. It removed the risk of power struggles. As long as the Supreme Emperor still stood behind the throne, No other princes dared to attempt a coup. By the time he stepped away, the emperor would already have enough power and experience to stand on his own. It kept the government running without delays, especially in times of looming war. The highest decision maker was still present, with a trainee leader learning by his side. It boosted efficiency. The two emperors could split tasks. The younger emperor could handle diplomacy and public appearances, while the supreme emperor focused on long-term strategies. From world history, a few other places have also had similar dual emperor setups, like Japan during the Insei period, the Byzantine Empire, or the Ottoman Empire, with the role of the Valide Sultan. But only Dai Viet and Japan turned it into a fully systemized, multi-generational emperor training model. Pretty fascinating, isn't it?